Hello and welcome to the 5th official devlog for what is tentatively titled Kardboard Kings. I think it's just going to end up being called that. My name is Oscar Britton. Rob is not here this week. He is busy destroying the planet or something. And following on from last week, I thought we'd do a little bit of a look through my Photoshop files for the cards and how I've created them. So here is one of them. This is the base card. You can see, never mind down here, my little virtual pet that I've made. Give him some food. So down here we've got like all the different layers. That's just the ripped card texture. Oh, there you go. I guess I'll just go through the layers. Here we go. So, alright, so first off, this ripped card texture is made, it's in a little group here. I'm really bad at Photoshop. I don't like put things in files or groups or anything very much, so I'm sorry if you're just screaming at the screen. So that's for one of the events in the game. People will come in and be like, do you know the name of this card? And you can kind of like work it out by looking at it, or you can do a bit of research. This is made of like 2 textures. I just got 2 paper textures, colored them differently, did a lot of kind of like erasing and things. I've got a few different eraser brushes, and then I think both of those are different opacities. So, it's just overlaid on each other, and that's just a simple paper texture that I just used twice. I'll just get rid of that one for now. Yeah, okay, so the card went through, if you watched the video last week, went through a lot of different changes while we were making it. This is the one we've kind of settled on, pretty happy with it. This is the base card. I'll go to the other ones after this, and I'll show you just the differences between them, but I'm going to go through all the layers now. So the text is using Nazare or Nazare font. I don't know how you pronounce it. It's font, it's about $50, I think. I quite liked it. And yeah, that's why I picked it. It's kind of like a semi serif font, I guess. It's got like it's sort of looks like it sort of has some serifs here and there, but it's kind of just like the line weight changes a bit. I don't know. So yeah, I'll just get rid of the text for now because it's not that important. But beneath that, what is this? Hang on, sorry. Text, get rid of text. All right, what is this? All right, so this line, this is coming back to what I was saying last week, how we were going for a sort of like charred look for like a magic circle that we've got for like the logo and stuff, for the Warlock logo. Yeah, it kind of looked cool. I like the idea of it being like sand that someone had poured on the ground and then kind of like it had been blown a little bit by the wind. I think I made that basically just by getting a straight line tool, doing that, lowering the opacity to like 20% or something, and then getting like a blend brush, which I have a few here. I think I don't know where I got it, so I'm sorry I can't tell you where I got it from. Where is it? No, I can't find it. This is really embarrassing. It might have been this one. No, maybe wet blender. Or actually, maybe it was a brush that I lost because I upgraded Photoshop at one point and lost all my brushes, which sucked. Yeah, so I'm just gonna go through and like turn all these things off as we go, and you can kind of see. What's next? Images. I don't know what that means. Oh, okay, that's just like the centerpiece. So that's made up of, so like that's just like a placeholder image I've got in there. That doesn't have anything on it, so I'll just turn that off so you can see the different. Actually, maybe I'll leave it on because it's kind of a good background. Okay, so yeah, if I zoom in there, that is just drawn by hand, pixel by pixel, I think. There might be a slight gradient on that, so that's just to give it like a little bit of depth, like it's a frame that is laid on top of the image underneath. What's underneath that is, okay, that just gives like this tiny little bit of like roundness. If you get rid of that, you'll kind of see like there's a few of those on this image that you kind of like, oh, you can barely see it, why do you even have that? it actually really makes a difference. So I just, like, if I get rid of it, see how just like it really completely changes. It becomes this very hard, like, metal surface. You're working with something like stone, which is what I'm trying to make this look like. You really need to have edges be rounded at just like a fraction even. You can see here I'm just flicking this one on and off as well. There's just this slight lightening around the edges there. Just gives it that slight, just tiny little amount of like roundedness that you know, worn stone would have. Even like new stone has that, so you kind of give it that. Turn that. Oh, actually, I'll keep it on. I was going to turn off all the different things, but I'll keep them on. The border. Okay, so that's made up of like the most elements. I think this is something that took so long to make, and I think this border shape that I drew is the same one. Like, I redid this several times. I have about 8 different versions of the frame, or of the card frame, and this border is the one that I kind of kept from the original one, so I don't think I changed it at all. I don't know what that is. Okay, yeah, that's just a little bit, again, adding a little bit of like light shading on top. I'm going through like in a weird order. This is the order. They're all stacked on top of each other, so you can see there's like that. Really needs that. Otherwise, it just looks like it's flat. Beneath that is, okay, like a grungy concrete texture with like a really kind of semi-transparent opacity. I think I just grabbed that texture off the internet. I don't even know if it, you know, where it came from. That is just the shading there. You could almost do without that, but again, it just adds it, like, see, just on the, like, up and down here on the sides, it just adds like a little bit of a roundness to it. Oops, a little bit of roundness to it. Okay, so that is like underneath that one is just this tiny little, like, a contact shadow. If you're a programmer, you'll know that as like screen space ambient occlusion or something, right? Where it's like just adding, you know, if you look at like a corner where shadows meet, they just kind of have that. And that sort of is what makes these things pop, I think. Most of this is done using either the gradient tool over here, or just getting like a paintbrush, just something really soft, and just kind of drawing it in. I won't do it now. You can, I'm sure if you're watching this and you know anything about Photoshop, you know how to use the paintbrush and to explain it. What's the next one? Okay, so this is up in the corner. You can see just up here. If you look really closely when I turn that off, it looks a little bit weird because the light is coming from the right hand side here. So just adding a slight gradient. That was done using the gradient tool. You can see on the other, actually the opposite side over here, there actually is like a slight lightness there as well. So that took a long time to kind of get that looking right. Another thing with the shadows is I normally, when I use shadows, I do the sort of complementary color shadows, where if you've kind of done a little bit of color theory, like if you draw something, whatever the light or the color of something that is shining on an object, do the complementary color for the shadow. So if like a blue light is shining on something, make its shadow like an orange kind of hue. That's not what I've done here, which is kind of a no-no, and I would have liked to have done that, but instead I just sort of had to do a lot of little detail in shadows to make it look semi-realistic. And that's because this is the border, so you can see that. That's because if you come further down, you realize that we've got all the different colors that needed, and I didn't want to have to redo the border and all the shadows for each individual color. So, you know, not super realistic here, but one thing you will notice if I go through all these and turning them on and off is on this left-hand side of the border, see it's like a little red tinge there. If I turn that off, there's a little blue tinge. This one is a yellow tinge, little green tinge. That's white, so it doesn't have anything. Black is nothing again, and purple has a purple one. The purple one's actually a little bit fucked up because I just had to, like, I deleted like a layer or something, so it's a little bit different to the other ones. But yeah, that's just something that, like, if you shine a light on a red surface, you get a little bit of the color bounce off it. So that was something I thought looked pretty cool. I don't know what this thing is. Oh, the text box tray. Yeah, so down here, this is something that took a little while as well, just to like conceptually work out what I want to do. In the end, it's like a slab or something that's been slotted in, and you can kind of see I wanted it to look like it's not just joined. Like I wanted it to look as though this top section here is like a separate piece of stone. So it's like a different texture, or it's probably the same texture, but just like the bottom is a little bit grainier. And just did a lot of so that's just, I would have drawn that just gray with pixels. That's just on top. Doing that little bit of shadow there, and just having it be almost completely opaque black along the very join there. Just kind of, that's what you just get. Like, even if I'm just looking at like in my apartment now, like where the skirting boards are, there is just this like faint black line where there's like just no light in there, and that's what makes it pop out. I know I'm sorry if I'm explaining like really obvious concepts to you here, but like just a darkening here, I guess. I don't know why I've done it that way, but I actually should just quickly turn a frame on, turn the red one on, because otherwise it looks weird. Coming down, these are all the different frames, and then finally the grungy concrete texture that just goes over the whole image. Looks okay. It was a lot more opaque before, but it's very light now because everything else, sort of every object ended up having its own texture. Symbols. Okay, so I think the symbols in the end just got deleted. Yeah, I don't think that is anything. Down underneath those, just these two, you can really see them here. These two little, I call them the nipple shadows, because they're just one on either side. They're a little bit dark maybe on this particular card, but on the two other types of card, the uncommon and the rares, you can't really see them as much, but I wanted to keep it kind of uniform. That's where the symbols go when like the number and the ability symbols go. This is just another tiny little bit of a shadow on this right hand side here. Again, these things are all not really in a grouping in any way. They're just sort of like, hey, what needs to go on top of something else? Here is something that I think this is one of the first things I did when I started designing this, and people have said they don't actually like this gradient shadow, so I just kind of reduced it quite a lot. But yeah, just adding a little bit there to be like, hey, look, the sun is shining on this on this like raised kind of border. What is this? Yeah, the same thing there. So just more and more. So if you get rid of those, you end up with quite a clean card, and that's honestly that's more what it would look like in real life, but just adding a little bit there just makes it seem a little bit cooler. And then that's just the white texture underneath it. And yeah, that's basically what the base level common cards are made up by. And all the cards are actually kind of have that as a base. The next one, we won't do that one, we'll do this one. This is the uncommon card. Basically the same thing. The only differences for this are the borders are done the same, all the shadowing and everything is all the same. The biggest differences, you can probably tell that, just flicking between them here, that the concrete texture is a lot more opaque on this one. So you can see, I've just got it turned up there. And then, the obvious other thing is these sort of spirally line patterns everywhere. Oh, and one thing I only realized when I was doing this before is, so the common cards have this like dash across the top where the text goes over it. And I kind of thought that looked kind of cool. Just sort of, it's like an underline, otherwise not having it there, it just seems a little bit like, here's the blank spot where you'd write it, whereas it seems almost like the text is something that is like non-diegetic, if that makes sense. So like something that is not necessarily there for the how do I explain this? The way I'm thinking of these cards is these are like stone tablets that like the warlocks or whatever are battling with. So having this line there is like, yeah, this is what the card would look like. It wouldn't have all this text and stuff on it. It might have these symbols on it or something, but it wouldn't have like text. And my idea was that this line up the top is like somehow like almost like a occult barcode, like the way you've drawn the line or something is the name of the spell that you're casting, something like that. I don't know. I wasn't really like thinking of it like really literally, just kind of thinking about it like that. And then I threw all that thinking in the bin with this one because I got rid of the line because it didn't really work. Because the idea of, so like this one I ended up reducing down to be just less stony. There's kind of like a little bit of texture to it. This one is like etched in stone. So I'll just turn off the text on this one. Yeah, and you can kind of just see I've just increased the, sorry, just feed this virtual pad again. Hey, there you go. So I've like increased like all the shadows and everything on this one quite a lot. I think this is still, this might be my favorite out of the 3 different designs that I've done. These lines took a long time. I kind of looked at a lot of, just ivy, obviously, things like that. This little leaf shape, I think I just like Googled like ivy leaf or something, got that picture. These are all, I think, exactly the same image that I've just like stamped in several times, merged down and then made just black and then turn the opacity down to get the kind of like etched look. So all these lines would have just been drawn using a brush with probably very little what do you call it, like aliasing, I think it is. Like it would have been just like a pencil instead of a brush tool. If I can scroll down, I don't actually know where it all is. Here? Nope. Images. Group 1. Nope. Bear with me. I will get there. Hey, okay, so it's these 2. All right. So yeah, I would have drawn this layer first, and I would have drawn that, and that looks okay. But it sort of looks like very light, almost just like this is like stained onto the concrete rather than etched into it. Especially those leaves. Those leaves look very much like they are a picture of the leaves that I have turned the opacity down on. Adding on top of that, just getting a brush, and I got just a little charcoal brush or something, and I turn that first one off. And you can see those are just some little highlights that I've drawn over the top of it. And then I would have cleaned those up with an eraser to make sure that they weren't, overlapping, or to make sure they were only overlapping. Actually, I may have even just used like the magic wand tool and deleted it, because the great thing about a kind of chisely thing is that you can have those sort of sharp edges, sort of running counter to what I was saying before about how stone you want it to be very kind of rounded feeling. So with the etching, that's how it ended up. I think I started off wanting these to be more the same thing of the lines on this one, where it's like the sand, but ended up going with this kind of etched look because it just sort of worked better. It's basically the same thing for that card. I like also just the frame. It took me, I probably spent like 5 hours drawing just a million different patterns and things for these lines, and I'm quite happy with how they turned out. I like that, they're not perfect. Like here, the numbers and things will like overlap. But again, like they're not, those are meant to be sort of like non-diegetic symbols, so that's all right. Moving on, the third one here. This one, I think, so when I drew this uncommon one, there was meant to be just 2 rarities. There was meant to be common and then the warlock cards was what we were calling them, since dropped that. And then we kind of decided, no, we should have 3 different ones. I think this one was just meant to be a variant or something. And I think I said last week that this was inspired by the Masterpiece cards from Magic the Gathering, the Amonkhet, whatever set block that is. And I don't know why, but I put this little kind of jewel thing down here. And I think that was inspired maybe by Yu-Gi-Oh! The like Millennium puzzle thing. And it's quite like a cool symbol. These lines and stuff, I'm not entirely sure where I got the idea for those. The Amonkhet cards, I'll put one up on the screen now. They've got like a little bit of this line thing going on, but not quite like this. I think, I don't really know where it came from. These sort of like, I refer to these things in my brain. No, I don't talk to people about my cards. But these sort of things on the side here, they're sort of like a razor blade. If you get like a razor blade, the like center of them have that little pattern on them. So I don't really know where it came from. I'm sure there's something in my brain where, it's like, oh yeah, I saw that thing as a kid and it reminded me. But it was just sort of like working with shapes and things here. And I did. This is like the simplest way to get these sort of like these are like the same kind of thing as the chiseled look I have on this one. Only these obviously are straight lines, and then I think I just duplicated the layer and moved it up a few pixels. So the oldest trick in the book is to give something depth. You just you just kind of like chop it and then do that. If you don't really know what I mean, I'm sure you know what I mean. Just duplicate the layer and then get the one underneath and move it a few pixels upwards, and you'll see what I mean. Change the color as well. Making it gold, I don't know, gold just seemed regal, and these are the rarest cards in the game. So if I zoom right in to this jewel, you can actually see like most of this would have been like hand drawn. If you zoom out, it's like, oh yeah, it looks a little bit more painterly than the rest of it. Maybe you're not like paying close attention, but I think I drew most of this thing by hand. Is that no? I don't know where it is in the layers. I can find it. I'd really like to find it. Where is it? Jewel. There it is. Yeah. Bust that one open. I really planned this so well, didn't I? Yeah. So there's just a lot of little details that I just kept drawing over and over on this one. You can see that's just that tiny amount of like glint, because it was kind of meant to be like another thing, like gold is maybe the hardest thing ever to draw, because you're like, oh, I drew it, it's just yellow, and it's like, oh, it doesn't look like gold, it just looks like yellow. So you've got to add all these little imperfections and things, and you've got to make it look shiny. Gold is just a really hard thing to draw. Not as hard as silver. Silver is maybe the hardest thing to draw because it's just grey. Gold, you can kind of get away with it being yellow, but silver, you've got to make it blue and all sorts of things. So adding that, then that was just a bit of a concrete texture over the top of it again. Concrete textures are just good noise, I find. I use them for a lot of things. The symbol, that was just the same one that's on the back of the card that I just zoomed out and drew it again. Zoomed out and drew it again. I didn't draw it again, I just made it smaller, and then it's actually squashed as well. You can see I've squashed it in because it's on this jewel is sort of in an angle, which doesn't really make sense if you look at the way you're viewing this card. That jewel would sort of be more like actually like down, but it just looks better to draw it that way. You would be looking at it from like slightly above rather than slightly below is what I've drawn it here. There you go. I think I would have just drawn that by hand. I think not even, maybe I would have used like a ruler or something, but I probably just cleaned it up afterwards. More shadows. You can see like how many layers is just this jewel. It's like nearly 20 probably. There's then that, and then the shadow, there's like a big shadow under it, and then a little like that contact kind of shadow again. Then there's that one there is what I was saying before about the light bouncing off it, so a little bit of a gold shadow. and then the contact shadow. So turn all those back on. You can kind of see it come together. Oh, that's so interesting. You can actually barely even see that like gold, but that was sort of a thing. When I say you can't see the gold, I mean you can't see the gold like light bouncing off it too much. But that was sort of something my like rule with doing these cards was, because I was working a lot with like shadows and opacity and things, and just like my rule was just reduce it until you can't see it and then make it slightly visible. And that was sort of what I did with all these things, and then just add tons and tons of little details like that, rather than having like one really obvious shadow or something. Just add like 20 shadows that are barely noticeable, and it will sort of come together a little bit as a whole. That was sort of my theory, and I think it worked. I am quite proud of how these cards look. So sorry if this is less exciting than it normally is, but I don't know, it's kind of interesting to go through my process of how I make these cards. But thanks for watching, and I'll be back next week. And so like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Bye.